as I've sat and enjoyed the Dillian Whyte versus Lucas Browne build-up, press conference, etc., one thought has cropped into my mind, and it's cropped into my mind several times. I personally think Deontay Wilder has had a missed opportunity by not taking that Dillian Whyte fight. I really do. I said at the time when Wilder-Whyte was being discussed in 2017, I thought Deontay Wilder should have taken the fight. And seeing how things have panned out, I really think it was a missed opportunity. First and foremost, Wilder is fighting Luis Ortiz. That is the route he has taken. Let's compare the two fights he could have had. Luis Ortiz in March in the States, Dillian Whyte in March in the UK. Let's talk financial. I know people don't care about financials too much. They say they want to see the best fights, but you know, the boxers care about financials. I'm saying this is a missed opportunity for Deontay Wilder. I'm not saying it's a missed opportunity for you or I. We know these sums of money that were being talked about for the Wilder-Whyte fight. How much is he getting against Luis Ortiz? I don't know the answer, but I would be very surprised from my reading around the subject if he was getting half, 50% of what he could have got against Dillian Whyte against Luis Ortiz. I think financially, he's taken a fight paying probably about half of what he could have earned against Dillian Whyte. From an exposure perspective, the opportunity to fight Dillian Whyte would have created a big brand name for Deontay Wilder globally and in the UK. You can sit here and criticise Dillian Whyte and say he's not a very good fighter, but he's an increasingly big name, and globally he is a much better known fighter than Luis Ortiz. He sells fights, he builds fights up well, and he's someone with real name recognition, especially here in the UK. And whether you like it or not, a lot of the big money, big name fights, the likes of the Bellews, the Hayes, the Joshuas, the Furies, are going to be based in the UK. So Deontay Wilder can kind of, in my opinion, consider the UK as his market to make real cash in the next 3 or 4 years. And a fight against Dillian Whyte would have boosted that very nicely. The Luis Ortiz fight, so far, for my money, it's slightly flown under the radar. Now, we're still a little bit of a time away from the fight. Granted, the public recognition of that fight could pick up, but at the minute, it's under the radar. Luis Ortiz, he's not the most marketable guy. I'm not sure if he speaks English. I don't know. I believe he might have a level of English. We don't usually see him involved in hyping up fights outside of the ring, etc. So, you know, that's a fight that he's going to take, and good luck to him about it. But it's a fight for me that represents less of a PR opportunity than fighting Dillian Whyte. Let's factor in the risk as well. I think Deontay Wilder would have been a real substantial favourite over Dillian Whyte. I actually find it very hard to make a case for Dillian Whyte to beat Deontay Wilder. I think stylistically it plays into Wilder's hands very nicely. And I don't think Dillian Whyte has too much to worry Deontay Wilder with. As for Luis Ortiz, well, I still make Deontay Wilder a strong favourite. I've covered the topic elsewhere in a separate video. So if you want to hear my full thoughts on the fight, you know, type it into the search bar, Boxing Gossip, Wilder Ortiz, and you'll hear my full thoughts on the subject. But whilst I make Wilder a big favourite over Ortiz, I view Ortiz as a more substantial threat to Deontay Wilder than Dillian Whyte. I view Ortiz as a better technician than Whyte. I view Ortiz as having more punching power than Dillian Whyte. And I just believe, all in all, he's potentially a more awkward fighter and a more awkward fight for Deontay Wilder than Dillian Whyte is. So what I'm basically talking about here is risk-reward. Deontay Wilder would have earned twice as much money, most likely, against Dillian Whyte. It's highly likely he'd have got twice as much exposure against Dillian Whyte, especially in the UK market, which is, for my money, the key market in world boxing for heavyweight boxing right now. And he's taken on a much riskier fight. Ortiz is a much bigger threat to Wilder than Dillian Whyte. So, for my money, he's getting half the reward for twice the risk. And that's not sensible business. Now, Wilder defenders will say Wilder just wants to test himself. He wants to fight the biggest, toughest, hardest fights possible. He wants to prove that he's a ruling champion. That's very noble. You know, that's very noble. If that's the case, then fair play to Deontay Wilder. I commend him for his attitude and approach. But proving Deontay Wilder is the champion and proving Deontay Wilder is the #1 in the world is not going to come against Luis Ortiz. Now, it's not going to come against Dillian Whyte either, don't get me wrong. Ortiz is a better fighter than Dillian Whyte in my money. But Ortiz has major doubts about him. He's been very inactive. His only recent fight was against a very, very low level of opposition. He's very old, Ortiz. Very, very old. And he's shown real signs of slipping in his recent fights, particularly the likes of the Dave Allen fight, the Malik Scott fight. His status in boxing and the way he's perceived by the fans has taken a huge, huge knock. He's also had performance-enhancing drug controversies, as you guys know. So what I'm getting at is wanting to take on the best, wanting to be #1 in the division is a very, very noble aspiration. But Luis Ortiz doesn't represent that. And whilst Wilder will get credit for beating Luis Ortiz if he does, it'll be the biggest win of his career. We won't really be able to say that what he's doing is comparable to what Joshua did against Klitschko or what Parker is doing by taking on Anthony Joshua. It still isn't a win that puts him in that sort of level of form. Luis Ortiz is top 5, but he's probably #5 in the top 5 if you ask me. That's my take on it. So if I was Wilder, I'd have been inclined to take the Whyte fight. Now, one other benefit is that it would build for that Anthony Joshua fight. And I think this is where people maybe got it a bit confused when this fight was first discussed. There was a huge sentiment, why should Deontay Wilder come over to the UK and fight against Dillian Whyte when Dillian Whyte hasn't done enough to deserve a shot? Why should he come over here to throw his hat into the ring with a fight with Anthony Joshua? Deontay Wilder is already a champion. He's undefeated. He's got a huge KO ratio. He's already done enough to get a fight against Anthony Joshua. He doesn't need to get through Dillian Whyte to fight Anthony Joshua. All of that is true. However, for me, he doesn't need to fight Dillian Whyte in order to get a shot at Anthony Joshua. He should have considered fighting Dillian Whyte because the Dillian Whyte fight was a good fight for Wilder. A career high payday, a career high exposure opportunity, a low risk fight, and a fight that put him in a prime negotiation position for that fight with AJ. The public would be going mad for the AJ fight. The public wouldn't be prepared to accept AJ Parker or even AJ Fury or even AJ Hay. The public wouldn't be prepared to accept those fights if Wilder came over and smashed out Dillian Whyte. That's my particular opinion on the fact. So it's not that he needs to come over to get the Joshua fight. The Wilder-Joshua fight would probably be there regardless. But what he's been left with is Luis Ortiz for what is presumably less money and less exposure. Let me put it this way. If Luis Ortiz does pull off the upset, and that's a competitive fight, it's not beyond the realms of possibility he could pull off the upset. If Luis Ortiz pulls off the upset, and Deontay Wilder's career comes crashing down and his name value, the public perception around him falls to pieces and he's no longer a champion, he's no longer an undefeated fighter, Deontay Wilder may look back at his career in 5 or 6 years and rue the day that he chose to fight Luis Ortiz over Dillian Whyte. It's all very well and good wanting to take on the best available contender. But if you look at the heavyweight rankings, there isn't the biggest gap between Ortiz and Whyte. I agree Ortiz is a bigger fighter. And what Deontay Wilder has turned down in the form of Dillian Whyte, for me, was a meal ticket. And if he is to get beat by Luis Ortiz, and just to reaffirm my position, I don't think that will happen. But, if he were to lose, that would be a career-damaging defeat. It could potentially be a career-ruining defeat, depending on the nature of it. And for me, the reason that fight got turned down was because of ego. Because didn't want to travel to the UK, and because didn't kind of like the suggestion that he had to fight someone in Eddie Hearn's stable in order to earn the fight with Anthony Joshua. I thought the psychology around earning that fight with Anthony Joshua got in the way, and I personally think that should have been ignored, and they should have taken the Dillian Whyte fight to fight Dillian Whyte, regardless of whether they wanted to go on and fight AJ. Dillian Whyte is a highly ranked competitor. He's ranked highly amongst all the governing bodies. I actually believe he's #1 with the WBC, if I'm correct, who's Wilder holds their version of the world title. Certainly he's in my top 10 of the heavyweight division based on his wins. He's not an exceptional fighter though, and he's a fighter I'd have picked Wilder to handle with consummate ease. I think it was a missed opportunity. It was missed earning potential. It was, it could have created an even bigger hype and profile around Deontay Wilder. And I think he's got the risk reward all wrong in taking Luis Ortiz, especially considering that this fight was available to him. Yeah, we've got a phrase here, cutting off your nose to spite your face. And what it means is, do you ignore the obvious solution or the obvious way out of a situation because of, ego reasons, or because of having to stand firm, and having to not derogate from your initial position. And I think that's what Deontay Wilder has done, if I'm honest. I think he's let the psychology, I think he's let the ego get in the way. I don't think he's liked the idea of, having to come over to the UK and be on an Eddie Hearn card and people viewing it as him auditioning to fight Anthony Joshua. But I think in making that decision, he's cost himself a great opportunity to look devastating in front of a global audience and to earn some serious money by beating Dillian Whyte. That's my take on it, guys. Let me know your thoughts. Am I right or am I wrong? Give your comments in the section below. If you've enjoyed the content, please hit the thumbs up. If you're new to the channel or you haven't done so before, please do take the time to subscribe. Many